Dear Lord, this is one of those passages that is humbling to receive as a sermon to preach. Lord, this is one of your testaments, God, to how serious you are and how jealously, Lord, you guard your honor. I ask and I pray, Lord, that as brothers and sisters here today, that you would help us, Lord, see the things that we may not want to face, so that the glory and the honor goes to your name. In Jesus' name we do pray. Amen. Amen. When I was, how many of you actually, let me ask a question before I get into the story. How many of you guys here worked in food service? Oh, really? No, like, no kidding. Like, actually, wow, I didn't, yeah, I got you, William. Saturdays, right?
Yeah.
Popeyes,
yeah.
got you.
Yeah. 10 to 4.
So 10 to 4, got
yeah.
you. So if you guys want some lunch, that's the place to be.
Yeah.
I worked food service early on in college. And a lot of you who worked commercial food service, I'm assuming most of you, if it was young, if you were young at the time, you didn't work the high-end establishments. You probably worked establishments where you're serving, I don't know, 50, 100 customers. In our case, we were serving anywhere from like 1,000 to 3,000 people in one meal. Food service is not easy work. Okay, I can testify to everyone who raised their hand. It is probably some of the hardest work you'll do. And people think, like, what's there to it? I mean, you just package an item, a product, and you give it to the customer. But there's a lot that goes into the preparation. Maybe you were in the cooking area, I don't know. Or maybe there's a lot of serving and customer service skills that you need in order to do your job well. And then the best part about the job, and this is the part that I really thought was the worst, was the cleanup. The cleanup is always the worst because you're already tired. You've already served so many people. And you get this smell. I don't know if you've worked a 4-hour, 5-hour shift and you're working with a food product, the organic whatever of the food kind of gets onto your clothes, and then you mingle that in with the sweat of working really hard, and then there's this stench that comes out of your clothes after you're done with the shift. And if you don't wash your clothes that day, the next day you're going to have a putrid smelling shirt or pants or apron, and so you're constantly cleaning. There was this one shift at our cafeteria, and it was a skeleton shift, as we called it, because it was during the summer. Normally a shift would have anywhere between 10 to 15 workers. And so you would be able to say, you know what, hey, if there's something I can't do, there'll be somebody to cover me, to get my back, so to speak. But on summer shifts, because there's less people theoretically, and there are less people that need or available to work, you only get 5 or 6. So normally you have 10, this time you probably have 5. And on this particular shift, I remember it, we were opening up for that dinner shift, and this director comes in. And some of you guys know for college campuses, if you work food service, that most of your time is spent with conferences. That conferences would come in and use the campus, and that your job was to serve the students or whomever was part of that particular program. And this director comes in, and she's super frantic. She says, our group arrived early. We have 500 kids. And by the way, we're coming to eat in just a couple of minutes. In 30 minutes, we're going to show up at your establishment. Now, on the books, we've already had 1,000 people ready and prepared for, and we were good to go. But to get another 500 people to come through our establishment, all these new patrons, we knew that we were going to be pushed to the limit because we already have a skeleton shift. And sure enough, they all came in, and these kids come in, and they're just like hungry, and you know, junior high boys, right? They rush into like a college campus, they're like, whoa, look at all this food, and they just start eating everything. And every single one, I remember the shift, every single one of us, all 5 of us did our utmost. I would have to say that we did a fantastic job in serving these 1,500 students. Not just the original 1,000, but the added 500 that added to the shift. And I'll tell you this, we all knew what we had to do. We were well trained. We were very well equipped by all the other times we had to work that summer to prepare for situations like this. Our job was simple. Our experience was sound. And so no matter what unforeseen circumstances came our way, we would be able to adapt to the situation. And I'm proud about how we handled that situation. Really glad about my coworkers and my team. But after all the patrons had gone through and had had their fill and were already out the door, that's when the fun starts. Because then you know it's a long night to clean everything up. Get everything back up to snuff so we can open the next day in the morning. And the morning shift is even smaller than the dinner shift, so that we have to clean up everything so that the morning shift doesn't have to do anything. That's fun. Normally, when you have 10 people per shift, you get 2 or 3 of them to go around to every station and clean things up as you go, so that you don't have a heart attack by the end of the night. But when you only have 5 to 6 people working with you, all you're left with is the carnage of what 1,500 high schoolers and junior hires leave in your cafeteria. Sure enough, as I walked back to the cafeteria, seeing the stations, the cereal station looked like it was a pile of gold underneath. If you guys know what I mean, the Captain Crunch is usually the least loved of all the cereals. The pizza station looks like a tornado hit it. The salad station has all these leafy greens all over the place, and ranch dressing, oh, I love to clean ranch dressing, right, is all spilled over the side, and their smudgy little fingers have gotten onto the glass, and you can see people's fingerprints. Why do you touch the glass? Don't touch the glass, please. It's a pain to clean up, okay? And so all this stuff is all around there, and I'm looking at the situation. Ice cream is from the soft serve machine is like flowing onto the floor. And you're thinking to yourself, man, I'm not going to get out of here. This is going to be a long night. And I remember starting to clean with the 5 or 6 people that were on our shift, and at the corner of my eye, I see our general manager, and he quietly slips out, gets in his car and drives away. And then about 15 to 30 minutes later, I see the associate manager slip out quietly, get into her car, and drive away. And I was the supervisor at the time, and I was like, thanks. It's going to be a long night. I mean, I understand. I mean, they're the boss. They're the general manager, the associate manager. They're full-time, man. They can do whatever they want. I mean, they're in charge. But at least to kind of stick around, like pretend that you're doing something in your office and maybe, work on something until we're done. I mean, morale is at stake here. I mean, we know we've got a long night ahead of us, and you just leave? Are you serious? You just walk away? Something you need to know about working with food service. We honestly don't care about the extra 15 minutes at the tail end of the shift. When you have a job and you have to clean something and you have to work on making something look beautiful before you're done, you just want to get it done as fast as you can. Because instead of making money off of those 15 minutes, you'd rather be at home watching a video on your computer, relaxing after a long day's hard work. And so nobody is like yelling and screaming and saying, yes, we get extra money from work. No, everybody's like, man, I hope I go home tonight and get to clock out early. And so I realized, thinking back on that event, and the reason I remember this event, I was disappointed. I was disappointed in my general manager for slipping out. It's just a hit to morale. It's like, come on, man. We're going to be here all night and you just leave right when the hard work gets started. But then I came to this passage. And then I came to this sermon. And I began to realize that the problem wasn't with my general manager. Not even with the associate manager. The problem was with me. I failed to communicate my concern about what they did. I failed to take ownership over about what I was going through and what was going on. I failed to communicate what I was responsible for. And another thing about this, as I thought about it a little bit more clearly, is that I am absolutely convinced this day that both the general manager and me, we care about the same thing. We care about the company. We care about our customers. We care about our coworkers. And so because we care about the same thing, I shouldn't be afraid to communicate what I'm concerned about, what I feel is a weakness, what I feel is a shortcoming, what I feel is a mistake to morale. And because I failed to communicate, I failed to take ownership, and because of that, an opportunity was lost to make things better. Because we were discouraged, and I never said anything about it. Brothers and sisters, today I want to share with you that if you care about what is right, you have no reason to hide. That in taking ownership of your shortcomings, your pitfalls, your mistakes, the things that you know you've done wrong, if you care about God, if you care about Christ, if you care about the same things that I care about, then together we can talk honestly. Because together we're on the same road, we're on the same mission, we're on the same purpose, and together we can make things better only when we can take ownership of our shortcomings. Only when together we are honest about our mistakes. And when we're able to talk about these things, and think about these things, and pray about these things, and work about these things, there's a bond that is created in the church. Whereas your leader, I've got your back. I may not automatically explain everything. As a leader now today, I kind of understand what the general manager did. There are days when I can't explain everything. Maybe he had a family engagement. Maybe he had to have dinner with his children. You know, there are things that I can't always explain. And sometimes I assume that we're on the same page. Sometimes I assume that you know why I do what I do, or what's in my mind, or what's in my heart. But I can't always assume that. I'm not perfect. I'm not omniscient. I don't know everything. So just as much as I need to be honest about what is going on in my life, so we also need to be also talking to the people above us and telling them what we see to be shortcomings as well. And it's in that double level of honesty, not just from the top down, but from the bottom up, that creates a bond within the church that should never be broken, because our example is in Christ. We'll get to him later, at the very end of this message. I asked you to read through the Joshua chapter 7 and 8, because there's just so much there that I just don't have the opportunity to get into every little detail. But there are some really, really cool things that I want to guide you through when it comes to this passage. And actually, I took the freedom of indenting the explanations that I want to give you here today. But the first step, I think, to taking ownership of shortcomings is this. Number one. Here we go into your notes. My style right now, at least, is to just give you everything. So you hopefully will never be lost. Number one. Read the warning signs before they become a problem. Okay? Read the warning signs The ultimate problem, that you're drifting away from the Lord. That you are wandering, prone to wander, Lord, I feel it, prone to leave the God I love. That's you. That's me. Read the warning signs before it happens. At the very beginning of Joshua chapter 7, verses 1 through 5, you get a scene explained very clearly that the people of God has forgotten their God. In verse 1, you see the situation where they're drifting away and Achan is proving it. Achan is deviating from the clear instructions of God, and he is taking matters into his own hands. In verses 2 to 5, you see the carelessness of the spies. They go and they look and they go like, you know what? Let's not trouble the whole Israelite army with this town. This town is chump change compared to what we faced in Jericho. I mean, let's just go ahead and let's go standard operational procedure on these people. I mean, we don't need God with us. We don't need to pray about it. We don't need to fast about it. We don't even need to wake them up. Look, let's just take about, I don't know, 2,000, 3,000. Let's stick with 3,000. Let's take 3,000 people. That should be enough. They took 30,000 in chapter 8. Let's just take 3,000. So, number one, you have the carelessness of the spies. Number two, you have the ignorance of the leaders. The leaders have no idea that they have drifted away from God. And then finally, it hits them in the face. They have a defeat. They get wiped out. And if you look at the text, there's only 36 people who died out of 3,000. There's no doubt in my mind that God was being a little bit gracious to only allow 36 people to die when they've been routed as an army. These are people that probably tripped and fell, and then the people took them out. Okay? It's like a miracle that only 36 people died out of 3,000, but it was enough to put the fear of God into all the Israelites so that the text says they began to melt in their hearts. The same way that Rahab said that the enemies were melting at the sight of God. Now the Israelites are melting at the knowledge of God has left them. Read the warning signs. Brothers and sisters, can I ask you a question? Have you let things slip spiritually? Have things become so comfortable? Now that you're a senior, now that you're graduating, now that the time is already done, senioritis is creeping in, finals are pretty much on their way to be finished, APs are finished, SATs are there whether you like them or not, they're almost, I guess, done, and now you get time to relax. Summer's coming, plans, cruises, vacations, fun time. Let me warn you. It may take greater faith to be closer to God when times are good than when times are bad. When the classes get really hard, when the tests become formidable, when you're worried about your marriage, when you're worried about your mortgage, when you don't know whether or not you'll be hired for that job or whether you'd be fired in the next couple months, you pray to God because you know that He's your only hope. But when you get that job, when you get that pay wage increase, when you get that bonus, when you do get those luxury items, when you get to spend all that free time, when you get ample time on your computer now because you don't have homework, now's when you need to really worry about your faith. Everyone goes to God when times are hard. But when things start getting easy, when Jericho has already been destroyed, when AI looks like chump change, you start slipping back into that same business mindset. Oh, this is standard operational procedure. We don't need to pray to God anymore. We don't need to wait to hear what He thinks about it. We don't need to know whether or not He's on our side. We've got this. We've done this before. We've got the experience. We've got the know-how. We've got the power takes greater faith to be faithful to God when times are good than when times are bad. How have we let things slip spiritually in our life? Because we got too comfortable. Number one, read the warning signs before you drift and backslide away from God. Number two, and this is the main point, that was the problem that Israel got themselves into. This was the solution. Take ownership of your shortcomings. If you've got a fault, admit to it to the Lord. Today, tonight. If there's something in your life that you know doesn't please Him, deal with it. Immediately. Just be honest. He cares about it more than you know, and you care about it too. Otherwise, you wouldn't want to repent. Be honest. Take ownership. Fess up about your shortcomings. Look at verses 6 and 9. Joshua is disappointed. He's like, yo, what's up, God? We thought we had this thing. We thought you were with us. I mean, remember Jericho? I mean, these guys are like nothing. What went wrong? And Joshua's like, you know what? And a lot of other prophets repeat the same dialogue. Look, why? I mean, far be it from you. You took us out, into the promised land. It would have been better maybe for us not to have crossed the Jordan if you're going to allow us to be slaughtered like this. I mean, think about it now. It's open season on us. If people like the Amorites can destroy us, the Canaanites are going to find out. And we're going to be pickings for them. They're going to think, oh, their God has now abandoned them. Now's our time to wipe them out. And I love the way that Joshua ends this in verse 9. He says, think about your reputation, O God. Think about how it's going to look for you if I fail in this. I mean, it's you all the way on this. And that you let us drop right when it matters the most. You see this with Abraham. Abraham says to God, far be it from you, O God, that you would destroy both the wicked and the righteous at the same time in Sodom and Gomorrah. Moses says the same thing. Far be it from you, O God, that you would take us out of the land of Egypt, only to destroy us for a golden calf at the base of a mountain. Think about your reputation, O God, if you were to do these types of things for us. Same thing's going on here with Joshua. He cares about the reputation of his God. It proves to me, at least from verses 6 to 9, that he has no idea about what Achan has done. It kind of makes me wonder, where were you in verses 1 through 5? Anyways, that's a sermon for another time. Joshua gets validated in verse 10. God looks at him and says, get up, stand up, boy. Let me tell you what's wrong. God looks at him and says, now that you're listening to me, know that the devoted things have been stolen by you guys. That the things that you weren't supposed to touch in Jericho are now with you now. And if you do not take care of this, if you do not handle the situation, you will be destroyed just like the devoted things should have been destroyed. I will treat you as if you were the devoted things. You will always be defeated. You will never have another victory. You will always be wiped out. You will always fail if you do not get this one thing straight. And Joshua doesn't argue. He takes ownership. He doesn't argue with God. He doesn't say, man, dude, I don't know what Achan was doing. It's not my fault that the elders messed up. Joshua just says, I'm going to deal with it. And he goes immediately afterwards and he handles the situation exactly how God tells him to handle it. God says, take them out by the clans, by the tribes. Take them out by their households. Take them out by the men. And I will show you who it is that did this. And sure enough, bam, 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 it lands on Achan. I kind of have to give it to Achan. I mean, Joshua, he gets called out by God, I guess. But Joshua looks at him face by face. Did you do this? And he goes like, yeah, I did it. Where were you? 36 soldiers ago? Why'd you hide? Everyone knew you weren't supposed to take it. Why didn't you say anything earlier? Why do you leave it to now? You know what you did was wrong. You know it wasn't right. Joshua, I believe, cared about his family. Joshua cared about his nation. Joshua cared about the reputation of his God. Achan didn't care. Achan didn't care about God's reputation. Achan didn't care about Israel. Achan didn't care about his family. And they were all going to die. And he selfishly only cared about himself. I know I'm not perfect, guys. I'm going to switch this turn. I wrote a list. It's a short list of things that I feel are wrong with me. Things that I feel like I want to share. Okay, it's not like everything. Okay, we form an accountability group, then we can start talking. But these are some things. They progress from not so bad to worse. Number one, I don't think I communicate a lot as a pastor. I'm single. I live by myself. I have a lot of thoughts flowing through my mind. I don't talk a lot. And I should. I should communicate. I assume, based on my private thought life, that you know why I do what I do. It's not true. I know I'm not a detailed person. VGM is coming up. There are emails from Taiwan that are sitting in my Gmail box that are a couple weeks old, left unread, because I feel like I don't have the bandwidth to dive into them with all the details, like Pandora's box. I feel like I have a lot of anger. Last couple of years, I've been noticing this about myself. When something irks me, bugs me, gets me the wrong way, there are times when I just like, I can't hold it in anymore, and then I'm kind of impatient. I'm very overly determined, and I don't want to listen to anybody else's stoppings of that. I remember I was trying to get someone to go to this trip, and I was asking them, this person was like, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it. And I literally kept at this person like almost every other day for 2 weeks, trying to get them to go on this trip. Until I finally had common sense hit me and smack me in the face and say, look, that's not. Let it go. I know you're thinking about that song. It's very hard for me to trust those I've forgiven. This has been brought up from time to time. That after there's apologies, after there's forgiveness, it's very hard for me to give responsibility to that person later on. I try to give responsibility to people and give them the benefit of the doubt, their first chance, but giving them a second chance is hard for me. And some people may say, possibly, that I have an unhealthy fascination with fish. Just come to my office to see what I mean. You know what? I share with you these faults because I think you know that I love Jesus. And I know many of you in this room love Jesus as well. And because together we care about what is right, I am able to be honest and take ownership over my faults and shortcomings. Why? because I feel like together we can make these things better. We don't have to make excuses. We don't have to play the blame game. We don't have to pass the blame to someone else or become defensive about our mistakes, faults, and shortcomings. No one's perfect, trust me, especially not me. But when you are able to admit and take ownership of your shortcomings, when you don't have to hide, when you're like Joshua and says, okay, there's a mistake, let's fix it. When you don't make excuses, when you don't get defensive. You know, the business world, I was reading this book called Extreme Ownership, and I started reading this book before I started preparing for the sermon, but I was like, dude, this book has a lot to do with what I'm talking about today. In the business world, you call these types of people destructive geniuses. These are leaders that never own up to their mistakes. They're very genius in the sense that they always pass the blame to someone else. They say it's someone else's fault, or it was that mistake, or it was the market, or there's too much competition, or the product didn't come out right, or R&D didn't do enough work. It's like, dude, just take ownership. You made a mistake. Because if you don't do that, it's destructive because your company never gets better because you can't admit your faults. It's the same way with your faith. If you can't admit your sins, if you can't admit, if you always hide them, if you never deal with them, if you never work with them, nothing's going to get better. Nothing's going to improve. But because we have a care for the same thing in Jesus Christ, we don't have to hide with each other. It's dangerous, though, to open up to someone who doesn't love Jesus, because selfishly they might use that against you. But if we both care about Jesus Christ and His selflessness and His care for one another, not only as pastors we can look out for you, but you can look out for us. And it creates a bond that is impenetrable to the evil one. It takes courage to do that. I forgot about that point. Got kind of carried away there. Point number 3. This is a tough one. The aftermath of what you will face in your life will reveal the seriousness of the situation. If you don't deal with the situation, God will deal with it for you. He's coming to judge. He's coming to destroy. Achan learned this the hard way. Right? He hides. He gets found out. Messengers are sent to his tent. They find the coat, the garment. They also find the silver and the gold. And here's the crazy part about it. They take him, the devoted things, and they take his family. And they stone him. His daughters and his sons die because of what he did. Our sin affects more than just ourselves. They affect everybody around us. It's not a private matter. Our shortcomings hurt the body, not just you privately. And God is very serious. He takes Joshua, he says, look, you now need to go and take Ai. I'm going to try to sum this up because this is like chapter 8 in like a couple of seconds here. Joshua comes in and he says, this is the strategy. By God's direction and by God's guidance, this is what we're going to do. We are going to take a small detachment of these troops. I think about 5,000 to 3,000 of them. And we're going to plant them in between Bethel and Ai, in the valley where we got destroyed. originally. And we're going to plant ourselves there, and we're going to launch an attack. And this first detachment is going to draw the attention of the king of Ai. And he's going to come out and he's going to try to wipe us out. At the moment that Joshua did this, it's like this Star Wars moment in verse 18 of chapter 8. God says, you know, use the force, Luke. No, raise your javelin up, and that will be the sign. And when Joshua obediently raises his javelin, the second detachment of troops, I think made of about 25,000 troops, go and slaughter Ai. Wipe them out like a wave, like a tsunami. And then after they destroy Ai, then they go and they help the ones in the valley who are being attacked by the king. In the aftermath, 12,000 people die in that town, both men and women in the town. And then the king is brought out to be executed in front of everybody. What is very key to this story, and this is the part I really want to highlight, because this is the part of the story that spurred on my message about the general manager of my work. You know where Joshua was during chapter 8? He was right there in the valley. He was right there in the weakest part of the situation. He didn't say, oh, you guys do the hardest stuff and I'm going to sit at my desk and drink a Starbucks. He was right there with his people. Man, I got to tell you, that's leadership. Leadership is the guy who's first in there and the last to leave. Because he knows he needs to motivate the people that are following him. How is it that Joshua can do this? How is it that Joshua can put himself exactly into the same situation of chapter 7 and have the courage to do so? I believe that he knew that he had the support of his God. Because he took ownership, because he shared his mistakes, because God granted repentance and forgiveness to Joshua, Joshua knew, I have a God who loves me. I have a God that is with me. I have a God that is going to give me strength to do what most leaders would be scared to do. I love this. There's two things from this passage that I think we see. First of all, we learn how serious God is about sin. We learn that there will be judgment, if not in this life, then in the next. And you might think to yourself, man, Achan looked like he was sorry. Did he still have to be punished? Yes. But would you see Achan in heaven? I think so. I think you'll meet his family there. Especially after what they went through. You also learn that when people are strong enough to share with you their shortcomings, you trust them. You trust them because they care. They care about what you care about. Because you know that they care about what you care about, man, you'll go anywhere with them. Even to the bottom of the valley of death. Because you trust them. I want to close today with a couple of points. A lot of what we talked about today has to do with leadership, but I think this applies to your family, this applies to your workplace, this applies to your church, to our church, and then also to yourself. Number one, sin creeping at your door. Another point that this book makes is that a team is defined by what the leader tolerates. If the leader tolerates laziness, there's going to be laziness in the team. If the leader tolerates lateness, there's going to be lateness in the team. If the leader tolerates disobedience, if the leader tolerates harshness, there's going to be harshness in the team. What sins are creeping at your door? See Genesis chapter 4, verse 7. You remember the story of Cain and Abel? Sin is creeping at your door, brother Cain, and you must master it. He kills his brother. How could you do that, Cain? If there was anybody in the world that should have defended his little brother, it was him. But he goes and kills him instead. How are we setting a Christ-like example? This is from our QT. Please join with me if you may. Isaiah 53. Isaiah 53, a fantastic passage. This is the example that we have in Jesus Christ. Someone who voluntarily took ownership of our sins. Chapter 53, verses 4 to 6. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. Yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace, and with his wounds we are healed. All of we are like sheep who have gone astray. We have turned every single one to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. Verse 11. And out of the anguish of his soul he shall see, and the Father shall be satisfied. By his knowledge shall the righteous one, my servant, make many to be accounted as righteous, and he shall bear their iniquities. As a parent, as a leader, as a pastor, as an older brother or sister, why should you share your shortcomings? Why should you be honest? Why should you be vulnerable? Why should you take the hits to protect your own? Because that's what Jesus did. Jesus took the hit for you, so we can take for others. And with that, we feel empowered as leaders because we have a firm foundation. Verse 12, I hope you didn't lose your spot. Chapter 53 of the book of Isaiah. Therefore I will divide him a portion with the many, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong. Because he poured out his soul unto death, and was numbered with the transgressors, yet he bore the sin of many, and makes the intercession for the transgressors, for us. Brothers and sisters, because of what Jesus was able to do, he is able to share the beauty of what he was able to accomplish with us. And as a leader, you share that same opportunity. You get to take the hit so that you can provide a safe place for people to grow. It's not easy. There's still punishment. Achan still had to go through a lot of stuff. I'm not saying it's going to be simple, but we don't have to hide when we care about what is right. The last comes from actually a different passage. Today I want to focus on just this verse of John 21. I'm going to paraphrase it for you. One of the big kind of applicational attributes of God that is highlighted in this chapter is the omniscience of God. That God knows everything. There's no reason to hide. You see this in Psalm 139. If you get to take time, you can look through that chapter. That's fantastic. But I love the way that John MacArthur deals with this topic. If you guys have been going through the discipleship book, there's this little portion in the omniscience of God that John MacArthur shares about his childhood. When he was young, he was told by his parents that God knew everything about him, that he couldn't hide all his faults. And he felt kind of bummed out because he thought to himself, man, like that's really harsh. Like no matter what I do, especially the stuff that I don't want him to know, he knows already. And that kind of got him low. And then when he got older, he went to John chapter 21 when Peter is being asked by Jesus, do you love me? And Jesus asks, do you love me? And Peter says, of course I love you. And then Jesus asks again, do you love me? And then Peter says, of course I love you. And then Jesus asks again, do you love me? And Peter says this is really cool. Lord, I know that you know everything. So you know that I love you. Peter points to the omniscience of God and says, if this is true of you, you know the good things and the bad. And that changed John MacArthur's understanding. Does God know the bad things you do? Yes. But God also knows about what you care about inside that no one else may see. Just as much as he knows all the secret things you do when no one else is around, he also knows what it looks like on those days that you are far from loving God. There are times when I see people on their cell phones when the scripture is being read, and I'm just like, man, there's no way that that guy loves Jesus. I mean, how could he be on his phone when the scripture is being... Oh, he's probably reading the scriptures on his phone. No, he's not. Look, he's scrolling through Reddit. Like, no, it's not. Like, come on. Like, there's no way. But then God knows. God can see in that person's life. And even when it looks like the whole world can't see that that person loves Jesus, God knows that person loves Jesus. Even on your worst day, on your dark and most depressing day, on the day that you're the most vile and probably the most nastiest person to be with, God can see your heart. He can see whether or not you love Jesus or not. And that's a comforting truth. Especially on those days that you look back. Especially on those days that no one else understands. He knows both the good and the bad. And he knew that Joshua cared. Let's take ownership of our faults. We have no reason to hide it. Share it with those who care as well.